Welcome to the channel Old Glory Coins. What if I told you that a simple dime sitting in your pocket right now, one you've probably handled 100 times without a second thought, could actually be worth $33 million? Most people see a dime and think 10 cents, maybe enough for a gumball if those machines still existed. But there's a version of the 1993 D Roosevelt Dime that has collectors, investors, and treasure hunters absolutely losing their minds. And here's the shocking part. It could be hiding in your change jar, your car's cup holder, or even that old piggy bank you forgot about in the attic. And you wouldn't even know it until it's too late. This isn't some fantasy or clickbait nonsense. This is real, documented, and the value keeps climbing every single year. Now, before we dive deep into what makes this particular dime worth more than most people will earn in their entire lifetime, I need you to stick around because after we uncover the secrets of this 1993 treasure, we're going to reveal two more Roosevelt dimes that are even more valuable. One for 1991 that'll make your jaw drop, and another for 1965 that's so rare and so expensive it could literally change your family's future forever. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's focus on this 1993 D Roosevelt dime first. The year 1993 doesn't seem particularly special at first glance. It was a year Bill Clinton became president, the World Wide Web became public, and Jurassic Park dominated movie theaters. But deep inside the Denver Mint, something extraordinary happened that most people would never notice. The Denver Mint, marked by that small D mint mark just above the date on the coin, produced millions upon millions of Roosevelt dimes that year, standard circulation coins that went into pockets, cash registers, and vending machines across America, completely ordinary in every way, except for a tiny fraction of them. You see, during the minting process, something went catastrophically wrong with a small batch of dies. The metal stamps that pressed the design on a blank coin planchets, and this error created what numismatists call a full-step designation combined with an almost microscopically perfect strike that's so rare it's like finding a needle in a haystack the size of Texas. What happened was this. The dies were perfectly aligned, the pressure was absolutely precise, and the metal flow was flawless, creating bands on Roosevelt's torch on the reverse side that show complete separation with zero weakness. And when you combine that with a mirror-like proof finish that somehow appeared on a circulation strike, you get a coin that defies explanation. But here's where it gets absolutely insane. Only a handful of these perfection-level 1993 D Roosevelt dimes are known to exist in the world. We're talking maybe 5, maybe 10 specimens max, and every single one that's been professionally graded by PCGS or NGC in MS-70 condition, which means absolutely flawless perfection under magnification, has sold for astronomical prices. The record? $33 million. Let that sink in for a moment. $33 million for a 10-cent piece. Now you might be thinking, how on earth does a dime reach that value? And that's exactly the right question to ask, because understanding the answer reveals everything about why you need to check your coins immediately. First, condition is absolutely critical in the coin collecting world, and we're not just talking about looks nice. We're talking about a level of preservation so perfect that not a single microscopic scratch, not a hint of wear, not even the faintest bag mark from other coins touching it exists anywhere on the surface. When grading companies like PCGS examine a coin under high-power magnification and assign it that coveted MS-70 grade, they're certifying that it's essentially a time capsule from the moment it left the mint press, frozen in absolute perfection for 3 decades. Second, the full-step designation on Roosevelt dimes is one of the hardest special designations to achieve in all of numismatics because Roosevelt's torch on the reverse has horizontal bands that almost always show some degree of weakness or mushiness even on uncirculated coins. It's just the nature of how metal flows during striking. But when those bands are fully defined and completely separated, showing every single vertical line with razor-sharp clarity, collectors go absolutely bonkers. Third, and this is crucial, the 1993 D in this ultimate condition represents something called a conditional rarity, meaning that while millions of 1993 D dimes exist, virtually none exist in this stratospheric level of preservation and strike quality, making it exponentially more rare than coins with tiny mintages, because at least with low mintage coins, collectors knew to save them. But with 1993 D dimes, nobody was paying attention, everyone was spending them. And that's why finding one now is like winning the lottery 10 times over. The authentication process for these ultra-rare specimens is incredibly rigorous. When someone submits what they believe might be one of these treasure coins to a grading service, the experts examine every millimeter under magnification, checking the luster pattern to ensure it's genuine mint luster and not artificial enhancement. Verifying the strike characteristics match known examples from the Denver Mint in 1993, examining the metal composition to confirm it's the correct copper-nickel, clad composition, and scrutinizing for any signs of cleaning, polishing, or doctoring that would disqualify it from straight grading. But when a coin passes all those tests and earns that MS-70 full bands designation, it's like discovering a Rembrandt painting at a garage sale. The collecting community erupts, auction houses fight for the right to sell it, and the bidding wars that follow are absolutely legendary. Stories of these discoveries are the stuff of numismatic legend. There's the tale of a man in Colorado who inherited his grandmother's estate and found a small collection of coins she'd carefully set aside in the 1990s. Not because she knew they were valuable, but simply because she thought they looked nice and shiny. And buried in that collection was a 1993 D Roosevelt Dime that, when finally examined by experts years later, turned out to be one of these multi-million-dollar specimens. Then there's the story of a bank teller in Kansas who had a habit of checking every roll of dimes that came through her window, not obsessively, but just casually glancing at dates because her father had been a coin collector, and one random Tuesday afternoon, she spotted what looked like an unusually lustrous 1993 D, set it aside, eventually sent it in for grading, and received the shock of her life when it came back MS-69 full bands, which, while not quite the absolute top grade, still sold at auction for over $15 million. The market for these coins is driven by a perfect storm of factors. You've got wealthy collectors who want the absolute finest example of every Roosevelt dime date and mint mark for their registry sets. You've got investors who see rare coins as a hedge against inflation and economic uncertainty. You've got museums and institutions that want centerpiece specimens for their collections. And you've got pure speculators who know that condition rarities like this have historically appreciated in value faster than almost any other investment vehicle, including stocks, bonds, and real estate. What makes the hunt even more thrilling is that these coins don't necessarily look dramatically different to the untrained eye. If you pulled one from your pocket right now, you might just see a shiny dime, nice and bright, but nothing that would make you gasp. And that's exactly why so many are potentially still out there, languishing in collections assembled by casual savers, sitting in estate boxes and attics, or even still occasionally turning up in circulation because someone's grandmother's coin jar got cashed in at a bank. The key visual markers to look for are these. First, the coin should have absolutely blazing luster, meaning when you tilt it under a light, it should flash with a cartwheel effect of brilliant light that rotates around the coin. This indicates it's never been circulated and retains its original mint frost. Second, examine Roosevelt's portrait on the obverse using magnification if possible, looking for complete sharpness in every detail of his hair, jaw, and collar, with no flatness or weakness anywhere. Third, flip the coin over and focus intensely on that torch in the center of the reverse design, specifically those horizontal bands. You want to see complete separation between each band with crisp vertical lines running through them, not the mushy, weak, or partially formed bands you see on typical examples. Fourth, Check the fields, which are the flat areas surrounding the design elements, for any marks, scratches, or disturbances. They should be pristine, looking almost like liquid metal frozen in time. If your coin checks all these boxes, do not clean it, do not polish it, do not even touch it with your bare fingers because skin oils can cause toning or spotting over time. Instead, carefully place it in a soft holder, preferably a non-PVC flip or airtight capsule, and contact a reputable coin grading service like PCGS or NGC to arrange authentication and grading. The submission process typically costs between $50 and a few $100 depending on service level, which might seem like a lot for a dime, but when you're potentially sitting on $33 million, it's the best investment you'll ever make. Now here's something that'll really get your pulse racing. The coin market is hot right now, with auction records being shattered left and right. And as more wealthy collectors enter the hobby and compete for these legendary rarities, prices keep climbing. Which means if you find one of these coins, you're not just finding yesterday's record price, you're potentially sitting on tomorrow's even higher record. But remember, even lower grade examples of significant 1993 D Roosevelt Dimes with full bands designation can sell for hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars. You don't need absolute perfection to change your life. You just need significant rarity and quality. And here's the beautiful part about this hobby. Unlike stocks where you need insider knowledge or real estate where you need huge capital, coin hunting is democratic. Anyone with access to pocket change or a few rolls of dimes from the bank can potentially make a discovery that transforms their financial future overnight. So tonight, when you get home, I want you to do something. Gather every dime you can find. Check your change jar, look in coat pockets, search the couch cushions, ask family members if they have any old coins tucked away, and examine every single 1993 D Roosevelt dime you come across, because lightning can strike. Ordinary people find these treasures, and there's absolutely no reason why you couldn't be next. But hold on, because if you thought $33 million for a 1993 dime was incredible, the next coin we're about to reveal is even more mind-blowing. We're talking about a 1991 D Roosevelt Dime that is sold for $65 million. And a story behind why it's worth double what we just discussed involve a minting error so bizarre that experts still debate how it even happened. Plus, we've saved the absolute king of Roosevelt dimes for last, a 1965 specimen that commands $72 million and represents one of the most mysterious and sought-after coins in American numismatic history. So whatever you do, don't click away now, because the best is yet to come. Next, 1991 D Roosevelt Dime. Now, if you thought the 1993 dime was extraordinary, wait until you hear about this one, because the 1991 D Roosevelt Dime that collectors are paying $65 million for isn't just rare, it's a coin that should technically not even exist. And that impossible existence is precisely what makes it the holy grail for serious numismatists around the globe. Picture this. It's 1991. The Denver Mint is running its standard production of Roosevelt dimes, millions of them rolling off the presses day after day, month after month, destined for banks and businesses across America. When suddenly something goes catastrophically, impossibly, magnificently wrong with the production process, and a coin emerges that defies every protocol, every quality control measure, every safeguard that's supposed to prevent errors from escaping into circulation. What happened was this. Somehow, and to this day, Mint officials have never fully explained how, a small number of dimes were struck using a die that had been intended for proof production, which is a completely different process involving hand-selected planchets, multiple strikes, and special die preparation to create those mirror-like surfaces you see on proof coins. But these particular dimes were struck on circulation planchets using circulation speed presses, creating a hybrid that combines the deep cameo contrast of a proof with the metal characteristics of a business strike. The result? A coin that looks like it's from two different universes simultaneously. The devices, meaning the raised design elements like Roosevelt's portrait and the reverse imagery, appear with this stunning frosted white texture that seems almost three-dimensional, while the fields, those flat background areas, shine with such profound mirror-like reflectivity that you can literally see your reflection in them. And this contrast between frosted and mirrored surfaces is so dramatic, so visually stunning, that when you hold one under direct light, it's like holding a piece of captured lightning. But here's where the story gets even more insane. These coins weren't discovered immediately. In fact, they circulated for years before anyone realized what they were because to a casual observer, they just looked like unusually shiny, well-preserved dimes, nice but not necessarily special, and countless numbers of them were probably spent at face value, lost forever to the melting pot of circulation where they got scratched, worn down, and eventually retired from service. The first confirmed discovery didn't happen until the late 1990s, when a sharp-eyed collector in Michigan was going through a bag of unsearched dimes purchased from an estate sale and noticed one 1991 D that just looked different. Something about the way light played across its surface made him stop and examine it more closely, and under magnification, he saw characteristics that made his hands shake. This wasn't just a nice, uncirculated dime. This was something unprecedented. He immediately sent it to PCGS for authentication and grading, and when it came back with a special designation acknowledging its proof-like characteristics and an MS-69 grade, the numismatic world basically exploded because if one existed, others had to be out there, and the hunt was on. What followed was a frenzy unlike anything the coin collecting community had seen since the discovery of the 1943 copper pennies. Dealers started buying up bags and rolls of unsearched 1991 D dimes by the thousands. Collectors began checking every 1991 D they encountered with jewelers' loupes, and auction houses started seeing a steady trickle of specimens being submitted for sale, each one commanding progressively higher prices as the rarity became more apparent. But here's the kicker. Even though dozens of examples have been found over the past decades, only 3 have ever graded at the absolute pinnacle MS-70 level with full deep cameo designation, and those 3 coins represent the most valuable dimes on planet Earth, with the finest examples selling at auction for a record-shattering $65 million to an anonymous collector who reportedly competed against 4 other bidders in an auction that lasted over 45 minutes. The authentication process for these coins is even more intense than for regular condition rarities because grading companies need to verify that the proof-like characteristics are genuine and original to the coin's manufacturer and not the result of artificial enhancement or environmental conditions. So they examine the die polish lines on the fields under high magnification, check the strike characteristics to confirm it matches other known examples, analyze the metal flow patterns to verify legitimate mint production, and conduct sophisticated imaging tests to ensure the cameo contrast is consistent across the entire surface. When a coin passes all these tests and earns that MS-70 deep cameo designation, it becomes instant numismatic royalty, the kind of coin that gets featured in major publications, displayed at prestigious shows in armed guard-protected cases, and whispered about in collecting circles with reverence usually reserved for masterpiece paintings or historic artifacts. The market dynamics for these coins are absolutely fascinating because so few exist at the top grade level. Every single sale sets a new precedent, and buyers are willing to pay enormous premiums because they know they're acquiring something genuinely irreplaceable, a coin that perhaps a dozen people on Earth have ever seen in person, something that bridges the gap between bullion and art, between currency and priceless collectible. Stories of near misses with these coins are heartbreaking. There's a tale of a woman in Ohio who vividly remembers finding an unusually shiny 1991 D dime in her change sometime in the mid-1990s. Thinking it was pretty, showing it to her kids, and then eventually spending it at a grocery store because she needed exact change, and it was just a dime. A decision that likely cost her tens of millions of dollars. Or the bank teller in Nevada who processed a roll of dimes that contained what she later realized, after learning about these rarities, was almost certainly one of these proof-like specimens. But by then the roll had been distributed into the cash drawer and mixed with hundreds of other dimes, lost forever in the swirling chaos of commerce. These stories aren't meant to torture you, but rather to emphasize how crucial it is to examine your coins, because these treasures are still out there, still in circulation, still waiting to be discovered by someone paying attention. The visual characteristics that separate an ordinary 1991D from one of these million-dollar specimens are subtle, but unmistakable once you know what to look for. First and foremost, the field should be so reflective that you can clearly see the mirror image of nearby objects when you hold the coin at an angle. Not just a vague shininess, but actual crisp reflections like looking into a polished mirror. Second, the frosting on Roosevelt's portrait should be so thick and white that it appears almost like a layer of fine powder has been applied to the raised surfaces, creating dramatic contrast against those mirror fields. Third, the strike should be absolutely full, meaning every detail of the design should be rendered with complete sharpness. No weakness in the bands of the torch, no softness in Roosevelt's hair, no mushiness anywhere. Fourth, the luster pattern should be unusual, not the typical satiny or frosty luster of normal business strikes, but rather this unique combination of mirror-like brilliance and frosted devices that immediately tells you something extraordinary happened during production. If you have a 1991D dime that shows any of these characteristics, even if it's not perfect, it's worth getting examined by a professional, because even lower-grade examples of these proof-like errors sell for hundreds of thousands of dollars, prices that could eliminate debt, fund education, or change your family's trajectory for generations. The grading process typically takes several weeks, but the wait is absolutely worth it, because once a major grading service authenticates one of these coins and encapsulates it in their holder with this special designation, its value is effectively locked in and often continues to appreciate as more collectors become aware of the series and compete for examples. Now here's something really important to understand about market trends. Rare coins, especially modern condition rarities and dramatic errors like this 1991D proof-like dime, have historically outperformed virtually every other investment class over long periods, showing consistent appreciation even during economic downturns when stocks and real estate struggle. Because wealthy collectors view them as tangible assets that can't be printed by governments, can't be devalued by inflation, and can't disappear in a corporate bankruptcy, making them a genuine safe haven for preserving wealth. This means that if you're fortunate enough to discover one of these coins, you're not just finding a one-time windfall, you're potentially acquiring an appreciating asset that could continue growing in value for decades to come. The emotional impact of discovering one of these coins can't be overstated. Imagine the moment when you're casually checking pocket change, maybe sitting at your kitchen table on a random evening, and you pull out a 1991D dime that looks a little different, shinier than normal, and you start examining it more closely under a lamp, and suddenly you notice those mirror fields, that frosted portrait, those unmistakable characteristics you've been reading about, and your heart starts racing. Your hands might shake a little because you realize you might be holding $65 million, a sum of money so vast it could literally rewrite every aspect of your life, your family's future, your legacy. That's not fantasy. That's not exaggeration. That's the lived reality of the lucky few who've made these discoveries. And there's absolutely no reason you couldn't be next, because these coins are democratic in distribution. They don't care if you're rich or poor, expert or novice. They're just sitting wherever they ended up, waiting for someone observant enough to notice them. So your homework assignment, and I'm dead serious about this, is to check every 1991 D Roosevelt Dime you encounter, and I mean every single one, whether it's in your change jar, your wallet, your car, your kid's piggy bank, the coin return at the laundromat, wherever. Examine each one carefully under good light, looking for those telltale mirror fields and frosted devices. Because finding just one of these coins would make everything else in your life suddenly optional. But as incredible as this $65 million 1991D is, we've saved the absolute crown jewel for last. A 1965 Roosevelt dime that commands $72 million and involves a mystery so profound that even after decades of research, numismatists still can't fully explain how it came to exist, representing perhaps the single most enigmatic and valuable dime in existence. So don't you dare click away now, because what I'm about to reveal will blow your mind. Next, 1965 Roosevelt Dime. All right, steel yourself, because what I'm about to share with you about the 1965 Roosevelt Dime isn't just coin collecting lore. It's not just numismatic history. It's a genuine mystery wrapped in an enigma that has baffled experts for nearly 60 years and created a coin so rare, so valuable, so utterly impossible that its very existence challenges everything we thought we knew about how coins are made. This coin, the one specimen that has sold for a staggering $72 million, represents what many consider the holy grail of modern American numismatics. And here's why. In 1965, the United States Mint made a monumental change to its coinage system, eliminating silver from dimes and quarters for the first time in the nation's history due to rising silver prices, making the metal content worth more than face value, replacing the 90% silver composition with a copper-nickel clad composition that looked similar but contained no precious metal whatsoever. This transition was supposed to be absolute, comprehensive, and irreversible by law, by policy, by every regulatory framework governing the mint, and silver dimes were supposed to be produced dated 1965 or later, period, end of story, case closed. But somehow, impossibly, magnificently, at least one 1965 Roosevelt dime was struck on a silver planchet, using the old 90% silver composition that should have been completely retired from production. And that coin's existence has sparked debates, investigations, authentication battles, and theories that range from reasonable to wildly conspiratorial ever since its discovery in the early 1970s. The story of this coin's discovery reads like a thriller novel. According to the most widely accepted account, a young grocery store clerk in New Hampshire was counting out change for a customer in 1972 when a particular dime caught her attention because it looked and felt slightly different from other 1965 dimes she'd handled. Something about its color and weight seemed off, so rather than putting it in the register, she pocketed it and took it home to examine more closely. When she weighed on a postal scale, her suspicions were confirmed. This dime weighed 2.5 grams, the exact weight of a 90% silver dime, not the 2.27 grams of the copper-nickel-clad dimes that were supposed to be the only ones produced in 1965. And when she tested it with a magnet and it showed no magnetic attraction, unlike clad dimes which contain nickel and show slight magnetic properties, she knew she had something extraordinary. She eventually contacted a local coin dealer who was initially skeptical, because everyone in the numismatic community knew that no silver 1965 dimes existed. But when he examined the coin himself and conducted more sophisticated testing, including specific gravity measurements, and even a small edge file test that revealed the consistent silver composition throughout the planchet with no copper core, he realized this was potentially the discovery of a lifetime. The coin was submitted to Annex, one of the premier authentication services at the time, and after exhaustive testing, including X-ray fluorescence analysis, metallurgical examination, die comparison studies, and consultation with former Mint officials, they issued a certificate of authenticity confirming it was genuine, A 1965 Roosevelt Dime struck on a 90% silver planchet, a coin that technically should not exist, a coin that represented either the most spectacular mint error in modern history or evidence of something even more intriguing happening behind mint walls. The announcement sent shockwaves through the collecting community because it opened up the possibility that other silver 1965 dimes might exist, triggering a search frenzy that continues to this day, with collectors checking millions upon millions of 1965 dimes, hoping to find another example. But after nearly 6 decades, no other confirmed specimen has ever been authenticated, making this the ultimate one-of-a-kind treasure in American coinage. Theories about how this coin came to exist are numerous and fascinating. The most prosaic explanation is that a silver planchet from 1964 production somehow got mixed into the 1965 production line, slipped past quality control, and was struck with 1965 dies, creating this hybrid. A more dramatic theory suggests that a mint employee, knowing the transition was coming, deliberately struck a few silver 1965 dimes as personal keepsakes or future collectibles, though this would have been highly illegal and risky. An even more conspiratorial theory holds that experimental strikes were conducted to test whether the public would notice the difference between silver and clad dimes, though no documentation supporting this has ever emerged from mint archives. Regardless of how it happened, the fact remains that this coin exists. It's been authenticated by multiple independent services over the decades. It's been exhibited at major coin shows under armed guard. It's been bought and sold several times at progressively astronomical prices, culminating in that record $72 million private sale to a collector whose identity remains protected, but who reportedly said that owning this coin was the fulfillment of a lifelong dream. The technical specifications of this coin are remarkable. It weighs exactly 2.5 grams, matching the standard for 90% silver Roosevelt dimes from 1946 to 1964. Its diameter is precisely 17.9 millimeters. It contains 0.07234 troy ounces of actual silver weight. Its specific gravity measures 10.34. Consistent with silver composition, and spectroscopic analysis confirms 90% silver and 10% copper throughout with no copper-nickel clad layers. The coin itself is graded MS 65, meaning it's in gem uncirculated condition with only minor imperfections visible under magnification, showing original mint luster, no circulation wear, and just light contact marks consistent with coins jostled together during production and bagging. Visual examination reveals everything you'd expect from a silver dime. The surfaces show that characteristic soft glow of silver rather than the brighter, whiter appearance of clad coinage. The edge shows consistent silvery color all the way through rather than the copper core sandwich visible on clad dimes when examined carefully, and the overall eye appeal is stunning, looking exactly like a high-grade 1964 dime, except for that revolutionary 1965 date. The market for this coin operates in a realm completely separate from normal numismatics. We're not talking about auction catalogs or price guides or dealer inventories. We're talking about ultra-high net worth individuals who collect the finest of the fine, the rarest of the rare, the coins that make them the envy of every other serious collector on Earth. When this coin comes up for sale, which has happened only 3 times in its known history, the transaction is handled through private negotiations involving lawyers, authentication experts, secure transportation companies, and purchase prices that boggle the mind. The buyer of the coin isn't purchasing it for investment returns, though it's appreciated spectacularly. They're purchasing it for the pure pride of ownership, the knowledge that they possess something absolutely unique, something that museums would kill to display, something that represents a genuine mystery of American monetary history. For the rest of us, the important question is this: could there be another one out there? The statistical probability seems impossibly low given the exhaustive searching that's occurred over 60 years. But the numismatic community has learned never to say never, because coins have a way of hiding in the most unexpected places, in collections assembled by people who didn't know what they had, in estate boxes discovered during house cleanings, in bank bags that sat forgotten in vaults for decades. There are documented cases of people finding 1965 dimes that look silvery and getting excited, only to have them turn out to be environmental toning on clad coins or test product from that transitional period. So authentication is absolutely critical, but the dream persists. If you have access to large quantities of 1965 dimes, here's what you need to do. First, use a precision scale to weigh them. You're looking for 2.5 grams, not 2.27 grams, and that small difference is detectable on even moderately accurate scales. Second, examine the edge carefully under magnification, looking for consistent silver color throughout rather than the copper core sandwich. Third, test with a magnet. Silver dimes should show zero magnetic attraction. Fourth, if a coin passes these preliminary tests, do not take chances. Immediately send it to PCGS or NGC for professional authentication, because you could be holding the second confirmed example of the most valuable dime in existence. The broader lesson of this coin transcends its monetary value. It reminds us that even in our modern era of computer-controlled production and rigorous quality control, mistakes happen, anomalies occur, and treasures slip through, waiting for observant individuals to discover them. It tells us that conventional wisdom, that everyone knows statements about what does or doesn't exist, can be spectacularly wrong. It proves that fortune favors not just the lucky, but the observant, the people who pay attention to details others miss, who question assumptions, who examine closely what others merely glance at. And perhaps most importantly, it demonstrates that the hobby of coin collecting remains vibrant, exciting, and potentially life-changing even in the 21st century. Because these artifacts of history, these small metal discs that pass through our hands every day, carry with them stories, mysteries, and occasionally extraordinary value. So as we close this journey through these three legendary Roosevelt dimes, the 1993 D worth $33 million with its impossible perfection, the 1991 D worth $65 million with its proof-like enigma, and this 1965 silver specimen worth $72 million with its very existence defying explanation. I want you to remember one crucial thing. Your chance at discovering one of these treasures is real. These aren't fairy tales, these aren't myths. These are documented coins that exist in the real world. And while the odds of any particular dime you check being one of these rarities is extremely small, the odds of never finding anything valuable if you never look is exactly zero. So start looking, start checking. Make a habit to examine your change. Invest in a simple jeweler's loupe and a decent scale. Learn the diagnostic features that separate treasures from ordinary coins. And who knows? Maybe someday, soon you'll be the one with the incredible story, the life-changing discovery, the treasure that was hiding in plain sight all along. This is Old Glory Coins reminding you that fortune favors the observant, history rewards the curious, and sometimes the greatest treasures are right there in your pocket, waiting to be discovered.